everyone. Sorry about that. Me and my internet have been fighting for like 5 minutes. I don't know what's going on. Well, 7 minutes because I was on time for 5:45. How are y'all doing? Let me know if you can hear me. I don't know. I think it's back on. It's working. We'll see. We're about to see in like 5 seconds. Okay, I can see y'all. It always has like a lag. Okay, so the internet has decided to work. All right. How are y'all doing? Yeah, yeah. I was my normal late, and then the internet said, nah, sis, we're gonna be late today. So we're just gonna do that. But yeah, okay, good. Hey Sam, 2 Sams today. How are y'all? Awesome. So let's go ahead and hop into it because I know that we are late. So all right. So today we are going to talk about verses. And I think actually more than just verses and Timbaland and Swiss, we're going to talk a lot about Thriller and, this commodification of selling Black culture and things of that nature. Because them complaining about whether or not they've been paid their extra millions of dollars is not really moving my spirit. But Thriller specifically has targeted Black creators, and there are separate articles about Thriller's, I would say, like their intentions and a program they are trying to run that I think we'll spend more time on. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so I figured it would be helpful because it has been a while, a quick throwback remembrance of what was Versus originally. So I live in New York, for those of you that are new and don't know. Thriller, yes. Okay, so I'm glad you said that, Kara. Every time I look at it, I see Thriller. So I'm gonna try to say Triller, but the name is so strange. Trill is like, to be honest, as somebody from Miami growing up, like that is not a word that I use anymore, but that used to be like a thing in middle school. So yes. All right. Triller is going to take a hot second. All right. I also may or may not have been up till the late AM yesterday, which was foolishness. It's summer in New York. All right. So a throwback of how Versus started. So Versus started in 2020 during the height of the panorama, specifically in March. And I would say, I think it's important to remember why personally I'm not like too moved by the selling of the original version of Versus. It's interesting. And why I think a lot of people are kind of like, well, sorry about you. That's what you get for doing nonsense. So Versus, particularly I would say like people that live in New York, LA had very strict lockdown restrictions. So did like San Francisco and like a few other cities. New York at that time, during the height of the panorama, New York, specifically New York City, saw sadly the most amount of deaths due to the panorama. It was pandemonium in New York. People were like, we had curfew. Like it was just like a very, I would say, stressful, of course, but also dystopian, like sad, just very wild ass time. So when Versus popped up, it was a nice way of like, okay, we're all stuck in the house. And by house, I mean these tiny ass apartments that people are not actually meant to be stuck in. The average New York apartment is running around 500 max square feet. My first New York studio was less than 300 square feet. It is not made for a human to sit in there all day. So people were very much losing any shreds of humanity they had left. So when Versus popped up, it was kind of like a nice breath of fresh air. Versus was originally started by Timbaland and Swiss Beatz, and it basically originally was akin to like a rap battle, and it was on Instagram Live. So it's accessible to anybody. You just logged onto Instagram. You could sit there and have a little party in your house. It was nice. It was like a nice thing to do. And then you would talk on the side, like with your friends, like in your group chat, your WhatsApp, whatever. And it was refreshing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So just so that we remember what it was before it turned into this foolery and nonsense, I figured I'd bring up some of my favorite ones. So we had T-Pain and Lil Jon. That to me was the most fun. That and Beanie Man and Bounty Killer was so much fun. So much fun just dancing around. Erykah Badu and Jill Scott. That was amazing. Just good energy, just good vibes, just get some happiness into your life. Brandy and Monica, which was more recent, amazing. Serving some looks. Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle. They had Gucci Mane and Jeezy, which that was a lot of fun, particularly because everyone was curious as to whether or not foolishness was going to occur. So, and listen, Gucci and Jeezy to me was the height of mess. It was giving fashions, it was giving fur, it was giving lots of things. It was giving lots of things. Yes. And so I personally really loved what Versus was originally before it got sold, before Apple did step in and help, I would say. So Apple came around in August, Versus started in March. There were some sound issues, of course. Instagram Live had never seen the amount of traffic. The highest recorded lives for Instagram still to this day have come from Versus. It was very much a cultural revolution. It was brand new. It had never been done before. It was amazing. It was very much giving FUBU, for us, by us. I loved it. And so one of the issues though, because it was so like, oh, off the cuff, it grew into something that I don't think either Swiss Beatz or Timbaland had imagined, was there were some sound issues at the beginning. And to be honest, I think the sound issues made it even funnier because it was just much like, oh yeah, people were originally in their house doing this because it was lockdown. People were in the new format now is more akin to a live concert. The original format was you are in your house, I am in my house, there is a potpourri outside, and we're just gonna have a good time because we're not allowed to go outside. So I have some stats. I wanted to give some stats as to, how iconic this originally was. So the most watched originally with 500 live streams was Beanie Man and Bounty Killer, which was amazing. The Jamaican police showed up. They tried to ruin it. And then Beanie Man kindly told them to go on, which I love that. They let it go. The first three versus matches that passed 1 million views, Ashanti and Keisha Cole, they were the most watched webcasts with over 6 million total Instagram viewers, literally broke the internet. It was amazing. Then you have Jeezy and Gucci Mane had about 5 million in total viewers. And Brandy versus Monica, they have the record for the first live stream webcast to pass the $1 million mark. So yes, as a culture, we did that together. It was amazing. Amazing thing to see. But, people love money. People love money. So in 2020, Swiss Beatz and Timbaland actually won a Webby Award for the Break the Internet Award for Versus, which was amazing. And then in August of that year, there were a lot of, I would say, like the larger streamers and larger brands. They realized like, oh my gosh, they're getting all these people. Oh wait, why am I here? We're getting all these people online. This is amazing. The internet had never seen anything like it before. What do they want to do? They want sponsorship money. They want, there were people, which I thought was hilarious until it wasn't funny, but it was funny for a hot second. People just popped up and were like, well, I'm going to promote my seasoning. I'm going to promote my kitchen pan. I'm going to promote my hair services. I'm going to promote whatever in the comments because so many eyeballs. So the big brands started noticing that, and they basically were trying to outbid each other of who could partner with Versus. So Apple won the initial bidding war in August of 2020. Apple started streaming it on Apple TV. So it was on Apple TV if you wanted a more seamless, semi-seamless, more experience. And then you could still watch on Instagram Live. So that happened. And then in 2021, nearly a year after Versus started, I believe it's in March or April. Let me see. Oh, March 9th, 2021, the series was acquired, which the company is more of a merger, I would say, than a full acquisition by Triller, not Thriller, by Triller. So, and that is when it got very interesting. I just wanted to show this because, oh wait, am I on the wrong thing? Yeah. Okay. And how could we forget the meme that kept on giving, which was Beanie Man dancing? Loved it. Loved to see it. And let me make me small, that Shaggy then made this beautiful post, but also to remind the Honorable Andrew Holness, who's the Prime Minister of Jamaica, that a lot of Jamaican artists, including Beanie Man and Bounty Killer, are unable to get visas to come to the US. And, it has really stunted the economy and the growth of dancehall. So let's see if Andrew wants to, fix that, which that's a separate conversation, but I figured we'd throw that in here because that Versus, I know it brought a lot of people joy. It was just so fun, so lively. And that I think was one of the first Versus where you had people congregating in a space versus just like in their house. All right, so let's move on. So let's talk about Triller. So I know some people are not familiar with Triller. and neither was I, to be honest, before the acquisition. It's a very interesting and maybe seemingly problematic company. As to why did they win this bidding war? So before, let's go back to 2019. Triller started as kind of a social media app. They are basically a rival to TikTok, although I would say they are not nearly as used. But their goal is to essentially replace or compete with TikTok. So in 2019, however, they landed one of their largest investments, about 10, it said 10 in the 10 to 20 in the article. The headline has $10 million from Snoop Dogg, The Weeknd, Kendrick Lamar, and more. So they got a lot of particularly Black artists to invest in this app. And their idea was, we are for the community. We are for the creators. Triller, I'm just going to keep saying this slow because in my mind is saying Thriller. Triller is not owned by Black people, just to put that out there. And they have a lot of lawsuits. There are various lawsuits ongoing throughout the years of how they have allegedly not paid people, how they have allegedly breached different privacy clauses in their T's and C's, things of that nature. Lots of mess. Usually when people bring up Triller, it's usually because they are in some legal shenanigans. All right. Now, speaking of that, on August 3rd, Taylor Lorenz from the Washington Post published this article, which stated in part that Triller, in trying to compete with TikTok, lured a bunch of Black creators from the TikTok app and basically made agreements with them. Almost some of them were exclusive and some of them were seemingly mostly exclusive, as in you only can post to our app. So essentially ruining their TikTok career. And if you do this, we're going to pay you. And what they did, and I think what is so disingenuous about this and why I wanted to cover this from a tech standpoint, Triller is a tech company. Tech companies are notorious because I have signed my name on that dotted line and been like, oh, I'll get this much equity. Equity is when they give you a portion of the company. You own something. It's usually a small, abysmal amount. But the idea when you get equity, and because all the rage child tech is trying to rebrand themselves, that we are for everybody. Anyways, y'all know how I feel about that industry. And that was in the last video that we posted. But one of their big things in rebranding and saying like, oh yeah, tech is very leftist, tech is very liberal, blah, blah, blah. Tech, we pay the best. Big tech pays very well. Regular tech, medium size, and the startup specifically, they don't have the money like that. Or they have the VC funding, the venture capital funding, and they don't want to share with employees. But what they do is they incentivize you by saying, you know what, Stephanie, I'm going to hire you today as corporate counsel. I ain't got it though. I ain't got it, but I will give you, it's usually amount of shares. Some of them do show you the actual numbers. It depends. I've gotten both in my offer letters. I do have some stock options that are vested from certain tech companies that I've worked for. And essentially they tell you, okay, we'll give you 10,000 stock options. You have the option to purchase them. They are at a cost. Depending on when you join, I've had some tech companies I worked for, Series A, Series B, they're like cents on the dollar, or to be like $1.03. Some companies, they've been around for like maybe 5-10 years, so their valuation is higher. You have to pay like $5-6 per stock option. And then essentially you have bought some of the company, so you have made an investment. However, it is not worth a red cent until an exit event occurs. An exit event is either the IPO, initial public offering. You can do that nowadays a bunch of different ways, so we won't get into that. So they IPO, so they're listed on the NASDAQ, whatever stock exchange, depending on what country you're in, or you can do it via SPAC. It's irrelevant the ways to do it, but you can do that, or they get bought out. So a merger or acquisition happens, they get bought out. It's so much easier. They automatically just write you a check. The likelihood of the Series A company actually exiting, slim to none. But that is not stopping these tech companies from promising equity to people. It does not stopping them from being like, you know what? I'm about to pay you maybe like 30 grand, but this $100,000 worth of equity of monopoly money, one day it could be yours. So Thriller is no exception to this. And to lure a bunch of the, in their new program, the Black creators from TikTok, they promise them equity. and a little bit of cash, tiny bit of cash. You cannot live as a regular person. This is a caveat off of equity. As a rich white person, you can, because what a lot of the founders will do is they will go to the bank and they will say, I have $5 million worth of equity in my company, etc. Give me a loan. And the bank will give them a loan. As a regular person, you cannot do that. Just to put that caveat in there, because there's mad people living off of debt, and tech specifically is a very, very wild place that we should probably do like a full video on that. So one of these days we'll do it along with like talking about it. So specifically with this, one of the TikTok creators, he had 500,000 followers on TikTok. So that's very large, a very huge creator. 22, he left where he was living in Hot Springs, Arkansas for a 1-bedroom apartment in LA. The lifestyle creep makes me so sad when people are just trying to chase their dreams. A 1-bedroom apartment seems very like, oh yeah, everyone should have, be able to afford a 1-bedroom. Like that's not ostentatious. He's not asking for a lot. LA, New York, these 1-bedrooms are out of control. A 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn now starts you at like $2,000. Which is insane. It's insane. Warren had the promise of stability in the form of a lucrative year-long deal with Triller, a short-form video app that looks and functions similarly to TikTok. He was part of a group of what Triller touted as 300 Black content creators offered contracts totaling $14 million. So $14 million, not each, across the 300 of them. And then, so essentially how they were paying them, now that's $14 million total. That's not $14 million in cash. So the Triller money, so this is a specific program they did to find Black creators, because before they did this, they were basically giving out shit tons of money to a bunch of white creators. I forget their first names. The Emilios, all of them, and they were throwing these lavish dinners at Nobu. They were buying them Benzes, Cadillacs, letting them run around LA and being like, look at Triller, is giving us all this money. It's great. When they got to the Black influencers, that version of Triller money, according to the article, was gone. And instead, they promised them $4,000 a month, not in cash, half paid in equity. And so $2,000 in cash. Now, basic math, you most likely, actually, I will go so far as to say you cannot live in LA off of $2,000 a month. I highly doubt it. Unless you have roommates. And even then, LA is a place where you have to drive. So how are you going to afford the 1-bedroom, food, car, or Uber everywhere, which is also very expensive, on $2,000? They're setting these kids up for failure to do nonsense. So then Warren, and I think this is like a very important point, Warren used to making content for platforms controlled by other people, found the chance to own a piece of something thrilling. You are owning a piece of monopoly money. Because it does not exist in the actual world, it cannot buy you any $10 grapes. It cannot buy you anything until an exit event happens. You are getting $2,000 in cash. It's very objectively wild. To be honest, if we're not doing the math, because y'all know math is not my ministry and the math will be very wrong. If we are going through his entire day and he's making $2,000 a month, that's what they're giving him, and he's having to do all these posts, he's probably making less than minimum wage. Content creators work so many hours. Like now that I'm doing this full time, I work the same amount of hours I worked when I worked in corporate, probably more, to be honest. You have to keep up with things. You have to do like all the research, which I was already doing, but making sure like, like what's going on, like what are the new trends, like keeping up with the lawsuits, on my end, keeping up with the lawsuits, making sure that like you're not missing anything, making sure you're covering the right topics. Okay, maybe you're not going to cover that topic, but I still want to read about it because I'm a curious person, etc. It's so many hours. So if we were to actually do the math of how many hours he's working a week divided by that $2,000 a month, they are probably in violation of mad labor laws. But he is most likely, I would go to bet that he is not an actual classified as a full-time employee. They're definitely classifying him most likely as a contractor. So the issue then arose because they lured 300, I believe the number was 300, Black content creators from TikTok to Triller app to basically Black people are the culture. Like everyone knows this. The very like disingenuous and odd thing going on with Gen Z is that Gen Z thinks pop culture slang, pop culture habits, blah, blah, blah. It's just, oh no, it's for everybody. Like, no, it came from Black people. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And what I find like really interesting, because I will peruse around on TikTok, and as somebody who's now doing this full time, it would benefit me to figure out TikTok and to be on TikTok. I know. So I'll peruse around and I'll try it every once in a while. Some of like the new white Gen Z slang is just old stuff we, the old Black millennials, used to say when we were kids. And it's so random to hear. It's so just like, what? And it's never in the proper context, but just an observation, just an observation. So what then occurred? Oh, did I have it? Oh, hold on. Oh, it's right there. Okay. I was like, where did it go? According to the article, the 300 Black content creators are unfortunately having to cope with uncertain payments. Many creators allege that they are compelled to keep up with a demanding posting schedule and vague requirements that make it easy for the company to eliminate people from the program. So not only are they like, yeah, you're only posting on Triller, you're doing these things, but you know what? If you're not doing enough labor for us, we're just going to kick you to the side. What was interesting was it was then alleged he was the only name, the only person that went public with his name. A lot of people decided to be anonymous for this article. They interviewed about a couple dozen of the creators. A few of the creators then stated that since the article came out August 3rd, literally the week before that, they hadn't received payments for a while. And all of a sudden they magically, according to them, started receiving their payment that they had been begging for and been like, hey, y'all are late. My rent is late. Like, what is going on? Triller was sending them paper checks, wire wire transfers, everything. And according to Triller, Lord have mercy. This is going to go on the whole video. I'm sorry. According to Triller, they, according to them, they have done the most out of any app for Black content creators. Which I was like, this is a bold ass statement to make, that they have done the most and that they are for the culture and for the creator and blah, 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 bluesy blue nonsense. Mess. What I think is interesting and what might be heartening, maybe potentially, if this actually goes through for the content creators that are in this, and why specifically I think the lawsuit is coming up now with Timbaland and Swiss Beatz, is Triller, I forgot to say it slow. Triller has quietly filed to go public, to IPO on the NASDAQ. Sorry. And they will be the largest creator IPO in history. I think it's super disingenuous. Like, these social media apps, these companies, they are very much like, we are a creator program. We are a creator company. No, y'all are just a tech company that only exists because you can profit off of creators. Like, stop the nonsense. But yeah, so they have filed as of July, as of last month. So we'll see if they actually IPO. If they IPO, then everyone else will essentially, once you IPO, you are allowed, after a lockout period, you are allowed to sell your shares. Now, it's not like, oh, yay, now I just made it, I have the money. Having worked, how many did I work at? 6? I think 6 or 7 startups, tech companies. I'd have to count them again. A lot of them. I have been at a company, which God bless them, they finally got it together. But they filed to IPO. I used to work at WeWork Corporate during the height of it. I got hired during the height of it, and I was so excited. That was my dream job. I had nothing negative to say about working there because it was amazing. It was wild. It was like a wild place, but the people they hired were very thoughtful, which was interesting. However, what was not interesting and not fun to live through was knowing that, okay, maybe I get these stock options, but maybe they are worthless. So what happened the first time WeWork tried to IPO, they filed, and it's all very public information, so I'm not telling you anything confidential. And there's a show about it now. I need to actually watch the show. I haven't watched the show yet. But they filed. They started the roadshow. The roadshow is where you try to get investors excited. They were trying to IPO at what was objectively an absurd price. I believe the original IPO number for WeWork was $50 billion. What? It was wild. It never actually made any sense. So when it crashed, I was like, well, it was going to be hit or miss. There was going to be no middle ground with that. What happened to the actual employees, though, when you purchase, you exercise, as we call it, when you exercise your stock options, say you pay $5 for your stock options. Let's do basic math because anything past the basic math, it's not going to go well. Say you paid $5 for your stock options. Say you have 100, that you paid $500. You have 100. You paid $500 total. The only way you make money is if the actual stock, when it IPOs or it exits, if it's worth more than $5. If it's worth less, say they IPO, it's only worth $3 a share, you have lost money. You have to sit there and hold on to that money until it hits $5, or you can just be like, oh, to hell with this. I'm just going to sell it off and make some of my money back. It is not a guarantee that you're making money. Most likely you will. However, it doesn't always work that way. I have seen people, and this happened at WeWork as well, where their shares were underwater. So underwater as in, oh, I paid those shares were high as hell. But let's say it's $5. Those numbers were a little wild. They paid $5. Once it got sold, it was $1 a share. You done lost the money. You've already paid for it. It's done. So the only way these people that all have equity, which is a lot of prominent, I would say music artists, are investors, and some of these smaller creators that were given equity, the only way that they're actually going to get paid out, and this makes sense, is if the share price is higher than what they paid, which we will see if that happens. I'm very curious. All right. So what was interesting is they've been trying to IPO for a while. So in December of last year, when was this article? Hold on. Oh, I forgot to put the date. I believe it's December of last year. Triller announced that it was going to basically float by merging with U.S. entity SeaChange, a publicly traded company focused on digital advertising. So that was their original plan, that they would exit via merging with an advertising company. And essentially, like, that didn't work. So the valuation was supposed to be $5 billion. They were going to trade on the NASDAQ. However, that never happened. So they are now trying to go it alone. So we'll see if this works. They filed on June 14th. Triller quietly confirmed that it and SeaChange had mutually agreed to terminate our merger agreement and is no longer possible to complete the merger prior to its termination date of June 30th. And then I think it's first week of July, they decided to quietly file to IPO on their own, which is still might fail. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So let's go now that we've talked about Triller a little bit to the sale of VERZUZ. So VERZUZ, which again started on Instagram, was fun, was all of us just having fun together. And honestly, my personal opinion is I feel a way that they sold it. They could have made so much money getting sponsorships. Like, hey, this one is sponsored by Ciroc. This one is sponsored by the Miami Heat. This one is sponsored by who, whatever. But greed will have you just sell people off. Like, whatever, to hell with it. What I did think was interesting, and one of the things I mean, if we're going to commend them, I'm not going to commend them for selling it, but that they did, which I'm like, okay, well, at least y'all did that for the artist. As part of the terms of the deal, Swizz Beatz and Timbaland joined Triller's management team, distributing a portion of their equity among the 43 performers. So they gave some of their equity to every single performer that was on VERZUZ. So I'm like, okay, at the very minimum, at least y'all did that. But again, equity is monopoly money until you exit. It's not worth anything. It's not worth anything until you exit. All right. Where are we? Hold on. Let me make it bigger because y'all know I cannot see. Both Triller and VERZUZ share the artist's music first vision. Interesting. Which the executive's chairman said, and he's the co-owner of Triller. An announcement: we view this acquisition as more of a partnership than an acquisition. Yeah, partnership. Interesting. Well, their partnership ended up in a complaint. So this is the complaint, which was filed the 16th. So 2 days ago, they officially filed the complaint. This issue, though, of alleged non-payment has been going on since January. So essentially what happened is in January, Swizz Beatz and Timbaland claim like, hey, y'all are behind on your payment. So we need to enter into agreement because I don't know what's happening, but you haven't given me my money. So we're entering into agreement onto how you're going to pay this out. So let me move me so I can lean in. Pursuant, so that's the agreement mentioned. It's the payment agreement. So pursuant to the agreement at section 1 thereof, $28 million plus reimbursement of certain costs and expenses, the remaining payment remain due and owing to Mosley and Dean. That is their government last names. Pursuant to the payment schedule set forth in the agreement. Specifically, the agreement provides the remaining payment must be paid by defendant Triller as follows. Triller shall make a payment of $18 million, $9 million to each of Dean and Mosley upon the earlier of 1, 3 business days following the closing of not less than $100 million pursuant to a subscription agreement dated February 14, 2022, or the closing of any investment for Triller Securities, I keep saying it slow, or March 17th, 2022. March 17th, been passed. It said the earlier of any of these things. What they're talking about is they have the subscription agreement in here or any other investment for Triller Securities. They are talking about the original merger deal. So in the original merger deal, they were supposed to, was it C Exchange? They were supposed to merge with C Exchange. That would trigger like, okay, yeah, y'all are getting all this money because you've IPO'd. It was supposed to be valued at $5 billion. Run me my 28 mil. All right, let me make me small again. Starting April 1st or March 1st, and these are dates that have passed because this agreement was hammered out in January. March 1st, if the minimum funding has been achieved in February, Triller will make a payment of $1 million each consecutive month for 10 months. Wow. Can you imagine getting $1 million a month? That's kind of wild. All I want in my life is $171,000 to pay off the rest of my predatory student loans. What an interesting thing. What an interesting thing. So essentially they entered into this agreement because according to Timbaland and Swiss Beatz, Triller was late on the payments. Triller, if we're like doing the math, most likely if they are actually late on these payments was because their merger did not go through. And their merger has continuously been pushed back, their IPO. When you merge, you get a huge influx of cash. So ideally, that's probably what they're waiting for, which is very interesting. All right. So this is just more numbers. It's not really that riveting. The entire claim is only not 7 pages, I think, because it's just simply a breach of contract claim. Like, hey, we entered into this contract. Where is my money? Run me my money. What is happening? What I found really interesting, to be honest, is the value of verses, which is what I was most interested in reading through this. So paragraph 22, defendants defaulted under the agreement by failing to make a payment of $18 million by March 17, 2022. More money, paragraph 23, defendants also defaulted under the agreement by their failure to pay a sum of $95,000. Yes, I had to, because the first time I looked at it, I was like, is that $95 million? That's wild. But 95,000 by March 17th, which is to show that the idea of verses and the idea of Black culture is so valuable to these companies. These companies will not exist if we are not there. However, we are constantly getting screwed, getting sold off, getting just, oh, well, you know. They could have kept this in-house. They could have hired a team. They could have had a whole social media department. They could have kept this going on. There are so many different things they could have done, but instead they're like, okay, we're just going to sell it to them. And I will give them the one credit. They did at least give the monopoly money, the equity, to the other entertainers. So yeah, I'll give them that. And to Blue Court's point, they undervalued verses by a lot. They did. For them to have the objectively obscene numbers that Versus got, it's wild. Instagram has never, after that, seen those same numbers on a live stream, and won't. Who's pulling? You think? I was gonna say a singer. I won't be rude, but like, listen. These like very dry, generic, whatever's going on outside of Black culture singers, they're not doing it. They're not pulling in these numbers. Justin Bieber cannot pull in these numbers. It's not happening. It's not happening. All right. Did we go backwards? Okay, hold on. Let me see. There's nothing. I think this is in terms of you can write anything into a contract. So I was going to bring this part up just for in case like you're negotiating a contract for yourself, or if like you are an influencer, always have aggressive payment terms. I have noticed, because I watch like other influencers and I'm always just like curious. Every couple of months, you'll see an influencer be like, I haven't been able to pay my bills. All of these, they'll ream the brands out. All of these brands owe me money. They owe me $20,000. They owe me $10,000, this, that, and the next, because they've given the deliverables and the brands have basically been like, oh yeah, 90-day payment terms, 6 months later, like nonsense. Always ask for your money up front. The one partnership or sponsorship partnership we did like 3 videos together, was with this financial company that actually I had been using their website for years since law school. So I knew they were reputable, but I put in the terms that half of the payment was due at the signing of the contract. I was like, yeah, half of it's due. And then if I don't get that, like, you're not getting your video. That's whatever. And it was great. So when I got my half and then I did the deliverables and they gave me the other half. So I always appreciate aggressive payment terms. However, with that being said, if you don't enforce them, then you end up in this problem. So paragraph 25, action for breach of this agreement. Now, this is the agreement from January. If Triller breaches any payment obligations under this agreement and fails to rectify the situation, to fix it within 5 days after 5 days is quick. It's like, listen, you have 5 days to fix this or we're in a problem. After receiving written notice of such breach, the full unpaid amount, so they were basically on a payment plan. So they said, you know what, the full thing is due if you screw with me. Unpaid amount remaining due under this agreement shall become accelerated and be deemed immediately due and payable. So you can include language like that. It's about leverage. It's about leverage. And honestly, a lot of, I would say, creators who have leverage, the brands are dry, they're dusty, they're boring. That's why they are partnering with the creators. They want something fun, somebody who can engage with people, etc. So don't be afraid to make them pay you upfront, which I think this is unrelated but related. In a separate lawsuit that is currently going on, one of the promoters that was in charge of setting up a Young Thug concert, they paid him half up front, well, $150,000. That man is sitting where? Under the jail. So they've now sued him and are like, hey, run my money back. Like, we cannot have the concert, rightfully so. So that I thought was like very interesting. His manager is a mess for that. Like, just give the people their money back. Obviously, he cannot perform at the concert. He is, in a different place. He is in a different place. So I would say, like, as a creator, as an artist, as a freelancer, ask for half your money up front. The worst they'll say is no, but at least they know that you're serious about it. All right. Okay. So all of these monies have been due, just so we have the dates. March 17th, so there was $18,095,000 due as of March 17th, 2022, and $1 million due as of April 1st, 2022. All right, now, Triller has not, this is the whole case docket. They have not responded in court yet, which they decided instead they would respond via TMZ, which I think that's all you need to know about them. You are using TMZ to make your statement. That's a choice. That's a very, very interesting choice. So the rep for Triller stated, this is not a feud over verses, but simply about earn out payments to Swiss and Tim. Not Swiss and Tim. Timbaland's first name is Timothy. So Swiss and Tim have been personally paid by Triller over $50 million. But the kicker, in cash and stock to date. How much of that is cash and how much of that is stock is what I want to know. Because if it's only $5 million in cash, is 2 different things. But also, again, I have a hard time feeling sorry for them for selling it. And they stand to benefit even more over time. In addition, they have annual obligations, which, if met and no breach has occurred, entitles them to additional payments. They continue, this is the rep from Triller, only one payment of $10 million is in question. So Swiss and Timbaland are suing for $28 million total, which they are stating like, hey, you were supposed to give this to me in March and April. We do not believe they have met the thresholds for the payment yet, which include but are not limited to delivery of a set number of versus events for 2022. Oh, Lord. We have been trying to resolve this amicably, and this does not affect Versus operations because remember, again, the original deal was Timbaland and Swiss now sit on the management side of Triller. So they are essentially employees of Triller or partners. We'll say partners, give them a little more leverage so they feel better about the silly decision they made. If this does proceed in court, we look forward to a judgment that weighs all the facts. Awkward. Very, very awkward. And yeah, so that's where we are with that. It is going to be interesting to see what happens. And you know what? I feel bad for the content creators that got lured off of TikTok onto Triller. TikTok does not pay. Like their creator fund is pennies to the dollar. It's good exposure if you can use that exposure into YouTube. YouTube, for what it's worth, AdSense pays out, brand sponsorships. The only thing that TikTok can give you in terms of monetary value, access to brand sponsorships, but you can do that on YouTube as well. Which is why there are so many creators burning out of TikTok because you have to do so many videos. Some of them are posting multiple times a day to get nothing out of it. So I feel very, very bad for those kids because they're young. They're all like 19, 20, 21. So young. So young. So yeah. All right, let's go through the comments. Hey, Kendron. Yes, I need to, you know what? You and me both. You and me both need to get used to this time. All right. We are sipping on Auntie, LOL. We are sipping, I was reading it, then saying it. We are sipping on water. I had a late night, hence why I'm late. But we'll be back with the wine next week. All right. Oh, as always, Asher, always Black people time. Always a CPT all day over here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and go through the comments. Cali Coco, they messed up selling to Triller over Apple. Listen, first of all, they shouldn't have sold it, but exactly, they should have went to the more reputable, sensible place, which I'm turning the AC on now that we're just going in the comments. All right. Hey to all the UK. Oh, y'all got jokes? Yes. Yes. Triller, not thriller. Okay. Okay. Jeremy, I interviewed at Triller and they told me 85K. I laughed in the recruiter's face. I know they were a company I would never want to work with. Listen, like the fact that they're called Triller is like is just really sending me. So I can't say the word. I'm like, I haven't heard this word in so long. Exactly. Rashati, I live in NYC and it was bad. Yeah, the potpourri was bad. I say particularly for the people in New York. For everybody, I remember, like, not to be like so sad and morbid for a second, but at one point in New York, they were unfortunately people who had passed away. They didn't have enough room for them in the morgue. They were just showing things on the news of these like large refrigeration sections in Central Park. It's terrifying. Well, the whole thing was terrifying. So I really enjoyed Versus when it first came out. I was like, oh, thank God, something light we could do. We could just sit in here. Yes, T-Pain was my favorite. That was a really good one. That was a good one. Cali Coco, Teddy Riley, Babyface was everything. Yes, even with the Wi-Fi issues. Yes, I loved that one. That one was very good. If you're just tuning in now, we are on to the comments. So you're just going to see comments and forehead, so you can scroll to the beginning. All right. Yeah, it was giving JA. Beanie Man and Bounty Killer felt so authentic, especially with the cops showing up. It was very much JA. I was like, why are y'all embarrassing us like this? We are on international television and y'all are embarrassing us. Like, why? Why? All right. Brandy and her poems. I love how Brandy is always so calm, collected, and literally looks like she has not aged. Wild. Wild. Listen, same, Kara, same. I enjoyed the mess of Jeezy and Gucci. I was like, oh, I was like, it's a snowy day over here. Nonsense is happening. It's great. Blue Quartz, we are the culture. Exactly. None of these platforms would exist without Black culture. Black culture is keeping them alive, but yet they just take everyone for granted and just more than take everyone for granted, to be honest. It's predatory and they're doing it on purpose. They're like, oh, give them actual money. Nah, not doing that. It's trifling. All right. Princess Saskia. Capitalism will always find a way to bastardize and sterilize Black culture. Exactly. Exactly. I completely agree. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. There are so many, Miss Opinion, I'm familiar with Triller, check out all, there are so many lawsuits. So if you're going to sell off your hard-earned idea, like one would have thought that they would have looked into that and been like, you know what, I don't know if I want to deal with them people. Because this is not the first time they're getting accused of not paying people. Or the second time, or the third time. Blue Quartz, when the goals are too big, it's a scam, red flag. Exactly. Because they'll set these goals purposely, and by they I don't mean specifically Triller, just in general, corporations will set these wild goals because they know you won't hit them, and they'll set you on like basically a bonus structure, which sounds like Timbaland and Swiss Beatz are on some type of bonus structure because that sad little TMZ. Why you would go to TMZ for your press release? Wild. The TMZ press release, basically the Triller rep stated like, oh yeah, if they hit these goals, then I suppose we could give them some money. Blue Quartz, the RSUs look, sound great until the stock market is inclined. Yes, and RSUs are, for those aren't aware, restricted stock units, which RSUs, when they pitch it to you when you join tech, not the worst thing to get, but if we're like ordering them of like what's the best, RSUs are pitched as the best. So you have stock options. Stock options are essentially worthless. The valuation is not real. It is a private valuation that the venture capital are the investors that mostly invest in these tech companies. The VC firms set the valuation. They say, you know what? We saw this brand and I feel like it's worth $3 million. They do their math and they just set it at what they want and then they buy at their price. So the stock options, they're worthless until you exit. The RSUs, the restricted stock units, are you get this amount of money and you get them. So like most of, I think like the big FANG companies give them, like if you work at Google, Amazon, etc., you have a set amount of RSUs, so you don't have to pay for them. With stock options, you have to pay for them. If they're like 50 cents each, it's not a lot of money. I worked at companies where they're like 5, 6, even more dollars. Like that adds up. If you have 10,000 stock options and they're $5 each, that's 50 grand, right? Yeah. I was like, that's so much money. No, that math is not right. Is that math right? Oh my God, I just hate math. Is that math right? Oh, I think it's 50 grand. That is 50 grand. I was like, wait, that's $50,000. That's a lot of money versus if you had 10,000 stock options, they were $1 each. That's only $10,000. If you have RSUs and they're like, hey, the value of the restricted stock units, we're giving you 10,000 RSUs, you don't pay for them. They just give them to you. But if the stock market dips down, they're worthless. So it's all a game, child. Type effectiveness, you will get paid in NFT. I'm glad that people are finally opening their eyes to the NFT scheme. Because if there were multiple lawyers on YouTube, off YouTube, including myself, being like, I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm like, I did the research. It's not making any sense. This does not make sense. It's giving pyramid scheme. And people are like, oh, you just don't get it. You're just not bright enough. I'm like, no, it's a scam. It is a scam. And now you have lost your money doing nonsense. Ay, ay, ay. Jeremy D, a 1-bedroom in LA is $2,500. Good. Okay. Because I was like, I know it's a lot of money. In terms of the former TikTok star now getting poached from TikTok to Triller, and Triller only giving him $2,000 a month, assuming he was getting hopefully other brand deals, but like that's wild. That's an assumption. You never know. That's so crazy. Sir Dave, I know this all too well. I volunteered, Lord, for a big tech company, at least in sales, but the company was rather small, and what they were paying people and what they would want to pay for work was trash. Yeah. Yeah. It's not. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Listen, we need rent control here. New York, certain apartments have rent control. There's rent control, and then there's what's the other one? There's like two different ones. Rent control. There's another one where basically locking your price. I don't do those anymore, but like I have like a rent control apartment technically. So like the rent control, the way at least it works in New York, is essentially your landlord is not allowed to raise your rent over a certain percentage. And if they do, they have to tell you 3 months in advance, which it helps a little bit. But when the rent is already steep, ay, ay, ay. Blue Quartz sounds like a content sweatshop. Marit's AVE slang. Oh, sorry. My nose running. Used to be very regional. Social media has made it national. So you'll hear slang from New York, Philly, Atlanta, and Compton at the same time. Very bizarre. It's very bizarre. I remember when I used to live in New Orleans, which I love New Orleans. It's my favorite city in America is New Orleans. And being like, what? So confused. And the things I would say, because I'm from Miami, and Miami is a very specific type of slang, and they were confused. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, never mind. You like learn, which is very interesting. It's interesting because TikTok has made commercialization of Black culture so much faster than it was. Like, this is not a new thing. People have been doing this. Justin Timberlake, like, people have been doing this, but TikTok has exacerbated the issue. And what I find like most disturbing is people will double down on it and be like, no, it's Gen Z culture. I'm like, you don't have any damn culture. Like, stop the nonsense. Yeah. We Crash is worth a watch. I need to watch it. I need to watch it. I heard it's very accurate. Some of my old coworkers have watched it and they're like, oh, it's spot on. So, hey, boo, how are you? Listen. Hey, Jared. I'm glad y'all made the live. Listen, pandemic, when this whole time when I was reading through all of the research, I just wanted to sing out Timbaland. But, I'm not going to do that and hurt y'all's ears. I'm not going to do that. I agree with this. Yep, I agree with this. Look, they should have taken the deal from Apple if they were going to take a deal, which I don't think they should have sold it anyway. But Tim and Swiss got greedy and the quality of the shows went down. Exactly. So I highly doubt they're going to hit whatever threshold of payout that Triller has set for them. It's probably set too high. And now the rest of us are upset with it, so we're not going to watch it. So that's what you get when, you do foolishness. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Oh, this is such a poignant and disheartening point, but yes, I agree. Me, Black folks have been conditioned to not understand our worth, but everyone else knows how much we are worth. That's how they keep capitalizing off of it. Yeah, and you have the systems in place where Versus was built on Instagram. Instagram is not their platform, it's Zuckerberg's platform. So if they wanted to continue it, it would have been like so amazing to have built their own platform and infrastructure to be like, oh, we'll do this, or do a partnership. They didn't have to merge with anybody. Be like, oh, we're gonna do a partnership with Instagram and keep it on Instagram. We're gonna do a partnership with Apple and blah, blah, blah. They could have done a joint venture. There were so many ways to structure this without actually selling it off. They just said, well, whatever, sell it off. Exactly. Kari Robertson. It's a crying shame that they brought all those resources together only to sell it to someone else to build. Exactly. And I think what is crazy about it is if you just look at the sheer numbers of verses, it is something that was so novel, so new, so what is the word? So creative. There's a word in my head that I'm just not coming out of my mouth. What's the damn word? That I don't know if like they couldn't see it, but clearly if all of these companies are courting you and being like, "Oh, I want to get in on this. I want to get in on this." Clearly you have something. They built like the idea of, okay, we're going to get some of the biggest artists in the same genre around the same decades that have similar music to do a friendly like battle with each other. Some like the Jill Scott and Erykah Badu, that one was just like, it was like getting a hug like from your auntie. Like it was just so calming, so like nurturing. They had like different vibes for different verses. The idea of that was so novel. That was the word, novel. So novel that they could have figured out the other parts of building it out were so much easier. Then they did the hard part, which was creating it. But child, cash money, cash money. Hey, Kanisha. All right. Blue Quartz. My contract payment terms are half upfront and the other half 14 days after completion. Yes. Breach of payment equals remaining plus 10%. Exactly. You got to give them penalties because if not, people will just take advantage. And they do take advantage. They do take advantage. Listen. Oh, thank you, boo. Listen, Aretha was a queen. Miss Aretha Franklin asked for her money in cash. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Beatz Triller is playing them like they played the content creators. I mean, karma come at you fast. That's why again, I don't particularly feel bad for her Swiss and Timbaland. I'm having a hard time. I feel bad for what we have lost because we could have gotten some more great content and some more happy vibes and happily rounded up some sponsorships for them. Tisk. Uncle Truth's 45. They messed up selling. They did. This is a great question, Antonia. So between TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, who pays out the most for those creators? Because this is what they were saying. KS was broke and he had 1.5 million subs. Oh, Lord. I feel like he's like the boogeyman. I don't want to summon those people. If he was broke, I would be surprised. Like, just because if you look at, I would add Patreon to this mix. So in terms of like which platforms pay out like from the actual platform, the most money is YouTube. YouTube has AdSense. So and also YouTube does this new thing, which a lot of people are annoyed about. YouTube will run ads whenever they feel like it. So even if I click that I'm not monetizing a video, so say I do a video on a sensitive topic and I'm like, I don't want any money from this. I just want to bring awareness, which sometimes creators will do. YouTube can still be like, that's cute, but I'm going to run my ads, girl, and I'm going to get my money. So YouTube, we have, I think, a 55-45 split. YouTube takes 45% and then the creator gets 55%, yes, of that money. The algorithm, though, is so all over the place that most creators do not survive just off of AdSense money. Like now that I'm doing this full time, my goal is not to survive off of AdSense money because you're playing a numbers game. You have to have such high views to make a lot of money. We're talking about this on Patreon. The most watched video now, for better or for worse, on this channel is that pink sauce video. I think it's like 180,000 views. That pink sauce video, though, has a very low, for some interesting reason, RPM, rate per milli, how much I get paid per 1,000 views. The CPM is a cost per milli, how much the advertiser is paying per 1,000 views. The RPM is what I get. My normal RPM sits between $12 and $15. It's pretty decent. And it's because like I'm a lawyer. My audience, we are seasoned. We're a little bit older, so they assume we have money to spend, to be honest. You're doing gaming, things for kids, the RPM is low. Kids cannot buy things unless they're logging into the iPad, and unfortunately, your credit card is attached to the iPad. Then the kid is going to rack it up. Other than that, kids can't buy stuff. Adults can. So my RPM usually sits $12 to $15. For some reason, that video, RPM is $5. It's low. So that video is making half of the money, less, a third of the money of what it should have made. So surviving solely off of AdSense of what like YouTube would give me is likely not sustainable because my channel is small. It's a small channel. It's like, the mega channels, yeah, they can rack in 1 million views, essentially, depending on your RPM will probably net you almost 10 grand, 1 million views. This channel in a month has never gotten 1 million views. The most it's got in a month was last month. I think it hit like 200,000 views. And for 200,000 views, because the RPM was so low, and I believe in pay transparency, so I don't mind like sharing. Because the RPM was so low, I got paid out, or will get paid out for last month. This month, we get paid the week of the 20th, always $1,000. $1,000 don't pay New York rent. $1,000 don't pay New York rent, which is why you see most creators doing. We have Patreon. So Patreon, the subscription is the community pays a subscription, and then you provide content. Or sometimes people just sign up for Patreon just for support. Different people have different reasonings for Patreon. You can set it up a million different ways. And Patreon, the way mine is set up, it only takes out 8% of what I get a month, which is nice. So I'm like, you retain way more money with Patreon than with YouTube. Instagram, their new thing is they pay out for reels. It's not a lot of money. It's less than YouTube. And TikTok is literally paying out cents on the dollar. They are not paying them anything in their creator program. So a lot of creators survive off of brand deals. They'll survive with brand deals, or they'll survive with Patreon. My goal is to honestly do a mix of the three. So that way, if something like fails for the month, it's like, okay, it's fine. It's fine. The rent is paid. Everything is paid. Student loan paid, whatever. So yeah. Yeah. So the answer is YouTube technically, which is why everyone is always trying to tell the younger people, like, yeah, TikTok is fun. TikTok, the algorithm, you can build a huge following. There are people on TikTok with 1 million followers and no money. They have no money. Because TikTok, it does not pay out. You have 1 million followers on YouTube, most likely you're getting a huge check, unless you decide to stop posting. But even then, if people are watching your older videos, you're still getting a check. $1 million on YouTube is more valuable than $1 million. $1 million, Lord, $1 million, $1 million. 1 million followers on YouTube, subscribers on YouTube is way more valuable than 1 million followers on TikTok and Instagram. So, and Triller. I don't even know what Triller is paying out to those people, child. But yeah. As a Black Gen Z, the whites my age stun me at times with their lingo. They're using old Black millennial lingo is what they're doing. Because sometimes I hear it and I'm like, what? But it's nonsensical. It's nonsensical. Listen, Jamaica cracks me up. I love us. It was the fact that I was watching it, and like a lot of my family was watching it too, that Versus, and then me and Gabriel were watching it. So when the police showed up, I was like, really? Okay, we're having a very JA experience. Okay, got it. It's giving 876. Okay, here we go. All right. Ooh, this is a question. Which Versus was the most disappointing? Which one was the most disappointing for y'all? All the ones I watched, I liked. There were a few that I was like, I feel like this will give mess. I think the Omarion one, to me, I don't know what's happening there. That was interesting. That one for me. I was like, okay, next, changing this, changing this. This was surprising. I was like, yes, no technical issues. I was proud of us. Till the police showed up. And then even then I was proud of us. I was like, oh yeah, you're getting a full experience. I liked when they did the producers. I thought was really cool too. Listen. This is a great question. I don't know. They probably settled. I haven't checked on it in a while. Did Kanye ever pay overtime for the Sunday service, or is that lawsuit still active? I have to check on that. I'm not sure. Listen, I feel like they should just stream the old ones. I would thoroughly enjoy just watching the old ones again, which I'm sure maybe they're available in their app. I have no idea, but they should just pay-per-view the old ones, you know? I would pay for it and watch it again. So happy. All right. I think we're all caught up. Hey, Jace. Yep. Like Julesy said, capitalists gonna capitalize. Yep. Listen, Robert, I know I was mathing for a second guess myself, but I was right. Look at that. NFTs are great for scammers. They are, because basically, and I've said this a million times, what a scammer, and in our the next episode, or the next video we're going to do in our Scam or Sham little mini series is going to be about Adam Newman, and specifically Adam Newman and tech founders in general. Because, child, the narcissist tech founders very much give scam and sham energy. What scammers will do is they will take a simple concept and make it so complicated, and they cannot explain it to you. And then they will gaslight you and tell you that you are dumb. You cannot understand this. You don't have any sense, blah, blah. And it's like, no, because you're trying to run a scam on me. The same thing that I've said for a long time. Like, if you hire a lawyer or you're going to a doctor and they cannot explain the procedure to you, they cannot explain the motion they're filing to you, they cannot explain the basic thing that they're doing, they're running a racket on you. They're running a racket, or they're not good at their job. Like, if you can't explain in 3 sentences what you're doing, okay, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. 2 sentences, really. Oh, Sam, I have 2 friends that fell for the NFT scam. I never understood that it was a scam to me. Oh, I feel bad for them. No. It was, it made its rounds for a second, and I was like, please don't, in like the personal finance space of what I would say, because I follow a lot of like personal finance people on Instagram since I have my student loan journey and paying off 6-figure student loans. It helps to keep you motivated. And there are a few people being like, well, we should do our research into this. And I was like, no, move from this. Move from this. All right. Rent stabilized. Thank you, BX Tiki. Rent stabilized, yes. So in New York, we have rent stabilized and rent control. I think rent stabilized is the better one. One of them is better than the other. There are people, which is really interesting, which I forget, correct me if I'm wrong, which is which. One of them, essentially, your rent hasn't gone up in decades. I had a neighbor when I went to Brooklyn Law School. So Brooklyn Law School used to own this really nice building that they sold in Brooklyn Heights, which, if you're familiar with New York, Brooklyn Heights, oh, stunning. So clean, so nice. There's nothing but like very much very wealthy, elderly white people over there. And I had a neighbor, it was a lovely old man. So he'd see me all the time. I was coming to and from class, and he lived in a different building. And he was in his 70s. And one day we were talking, and he was like, they want me to die, Stephanie. I was like, what? He's like, they want me to die so they can take my apartment because I forget if it's rent control or rent stabilized. And he's like, I'm paying like $600 a month. He's like, but I'm not going to go. And it was so serious because basically you can't kick them out, and they're paying next to nothing. There are a few apartments like that left in New York, and you always know when people have them because they try to you're not supposed to pass them down. They try to pass them down to their family members. It's great. But I think I have rent control, which is essentially they have to give you a lot of notice. Rent stabilized is hard I don't think they even do it anymore, but there are a few people, a decent amount of people that have it every once in a while. They're paying next to nothing. Oh, New Orleans is the best. New Orleans is the best. It's very humid, yes. It's a swamp. It is a swamp. All right. Innovative. Yes, Kendra, that was the other word, innovative. Because I was like, what is the gosh darn word for what they did? I'm very sad. I'm just honestly, I feel like it's a loss for the community that they sold it off. So we're just gonna see it disintegrate. Another one of the, and also I think what they're not acknowledging and realizing, the community together made Versus what it is. They had the idea and they did it, but if we didn't show up and all those eyeballs and literally, 6 million people, the largest live stream they did, 6 million people, it's mostly us, it's 90% us, and then curious other people, I'd assume, showing up to these things, they would not have gotten all this attention. So, yeah. All right. Her Highness. Google needs to figure out a better notification system so that people can attend lives from their favorite celebrities like they do on Instagram. Do you remember Ustream? Oh, I don't remember Ustream. But I think the notification, even like sometimes y'all will tell me like the notifications for YouTube aren't all that great. It's very interesting to figure it out. Courtney, hey Stephanie, hey boo. I honestly miss the old verses. They focus too much on the theatrics and it's riddled with technical issues now. The intimacy is gone and you can just tell it's a money venture. Exactly. I liked when, like, I didn't mind when it was fuzzy, but you could clearly tell, like with T-Pain and Lil Jon, for example, you could tell like it was just them. Like, I think T-Pain might have been in his studio in his house. It was very cute. Like they're sitting there, they're trying to figure it out. They're doing the song, they're talking to each other, they're joking around. It was great. And now it's like, okay, here we go. Now it's turned into like, was the Ray J incident on Versus with Omar? Did that happen on Versus? Nonsense. It's turned into nonsense. All right. Okay. Let me just catch up and then I'm going to send y'all off to dinner. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. Okay. Oh, this is wild. Let's hit the belly. Listen. It was giving lovable uncle. I appreciated the belly move. Yes. Yes. We talk about Elon Musk scammed the whole country for electric vehicle grants in California for the Hyperloop. The way the man killed the Hyperloop, villain. That man is a villain. Awful human being. Because he didn't think that being in public transit with strangers is gross. To who? The train. I mean, okay. The train in New York has devolved into a wild place during the panorama. So pre-panorama, the train was fine. Nowadays, I'm understandably a bit frightened. I'm still going on it. But yes, exactly. Okay, yeah. Because I was like, was that the same? I clicked on, clicked off, clicked on because I was like, this is commotion happening. Just a mess. And then the poor baby was being held like, why am I here? What is happening? Yes, Jamila, that was OG rent control. Rent didn't go up. Okay, yep. I can never remember which is which. Yes. All right. This is a great question. Princess Saskia, which YouTube genre has the highest rate CPM? I think it's the finance people. I think the personal finance people have the most. Like some of them, and I've watched a few of like their channels where they talk about it. I think some of them have like RPM sitting at like $20. They're making a coin. So they have like smaller channels, some of them even less views, but they are making a lot more money. So exactly. And that's what I'm mostly upset with them about, Robert. They sold off our culture. Exactly. Like we got y'all here. Is us tuning in every week. What you mean? You didn't consult with nobody before you just sell them. It's fine. And now they're mad that we're not watching it. It's turned into nonsense. It's turned into nonsense. All right. Okay. Oh, perfect. We've caught up now. Yes. Hey, he's awful. Y'all know how I feel about that man. He's making coin, money. That's why he continues to do it. And I think that's why I try to tell people, particularly if you're doing debt payoff. Yes, I started with the Dave Ramsey plan. It works to an extent. It is not for people to have six-figure debt. It honestly like is too restrictive, but his what people call like fire and brimstone way of dealing with people, he's just a crotchety person and he's doing it on purpose because he knows some people like to be yelled at for whatever odd reason. And the other half of people are like, oh, you're condescending, you're awful, are still giving him views. So he's just like, walking to the bank in his $8 million mansion that he lives in while he yells at poor people all day. Mess. But on that note, I appreciate y'all. And let me see things that are coming up on the channel. We're going to have our Patreon live. So our Patreon live is bi-weekly. So next Wednesday is our week at 5 p.m. EST, which I'm on time for those. I was on time last time. We're going to have our Patreon live. And then we are going to do, I want to do the Trump raid in an edited video just because the Trumpers will pop up. And if they pop up during the live, it's too much commotion for everyone involved. So I'm going to try and do that tomorrow. So we could talk about the FBI popping up into Cheeto's house, which is hysterical. And more so this interesting thing now of the right wing saying like, oh, defund the FBI. What? I thought y'all loved the police. What do you mean? What do you mean? Interesting. Very interesting. So we'll cover that. So I'm going to try film and edit that tomorrow. And then we are going to do another Shaman Scam mini-series next week about tech founders specifically, because the VC companies, the venture capitalists, are just throwing cash, but only at certain people, which is fascinating. And yeah, and then we'll have our live, of course, next Thursday at 5:30 p.m. I'll be on time. And yeah. Wow. I need to, I've been following it throughout like the week to see, that's disgusting. They're misopinion, FBI agents got docs. They're disgusting. Like these people like that are just not, I'm not talking about the FBI agents. I'm the like the Trump support team. Like what are y'all doing? Like what are y'all doing? Nonsense. Dedicated to nonsense. Oh, child. But yeah. So we're going to cover that, and that should be interesting. Thank you guys so much. Awesome. Thank you, S. Davis. Appreciate y'all. So I will see y'all tomorrow, maybe tomorrow Saturday. I'm going to try and post it by tomorrow. So we will see. All right. Y'all have a good night. Enjoy your dinner. Have a good sleep for those of you in the UK. I know it's late. All right. I'll catch y'all later. Bye. I spilled the water.